I got fired for stealing $5,000 from a billionaire. Except I wasn't stealing. I was trying to save him. And that one moment, that one choice I made in 3 seconds, changed my entire life. It gave me everything I ever wanted and almost destroyed me in the process. You think you know how this story ends, but trust me, you don't. This is the story of how I fell in love with the man who fired me and why he had to choose between his empire and my heart. Stay with me, because what happens next you won't believe. Welcome to the story room. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you a story about a moment that changed everything. About a girl who came to the big city with nothing but hope in her heart, and a man who had everything except the one thing that mattered most. Her name was Rachel Torres, and she was 26 years old when she stepped off that bus in Chicago with $200 in her pocket and a dream bigger than the skyscrapers around her. Back home in a small town in Ohio, Rachel had worked at her family's diner since she was 16. But after her dad passed away, he made her promise something. "Don't stay small, baby girl," he'd whispered in that hospital room. "Go out there and show the world what you're made of." So here she was, 3 weeks into her new life, working at the Sterling Rose, one of the fanciest hotels in downtown Chicago. Not as a guest, mind you, but as a server in their exclusive rooftop restaurant. The kind of place where a single glass of wine cost more than Rachel used to make in a day back home. And that's where she first saw him. Daniel Grant, 34 years old, owner of Grant Hotels International, 15 luxury properties across the country. Forbes said he was worth over $2 billion. But you wouldn't know it from looking at him, not really. Sure, his suit probably cost thousands, but what struck Rachel most was how alone he seemed. Every Thursday night, like clockwork, he'd come to his own restaurant and sit at table 12 by the window. Always alone. Always watching everything with these intense dark eyes that seemed to notice every mistake, every detail. The other servers were terrified of him. "Don't mess up when he's here," her coworker Beth had warned her. "He fired someone last month for bringing the wrong wine glass. The man's brilliant at business, but he's got ice in his veins." Rachel tried not to stare, but there was something magnetic about him. Something sad, maybe. Like he was searching for something he couldn't find. Tonight was a Thursday. Daniel was at his usual table, barely touching his expensive dinner while he typed on his phone. Rachel was polishing glasses at the bar, trying to memorize the wine list for the 100th time, when something strange happened. Daniel's head slowly lowered to the table. His hand went slack. Within seconds, it was clear that this powerful man had fallen asleep right there in his own restaurant. The whole place seemed to freeze. Servers stopped mid-step. Even the soft jazz music seemed to get quieter. This had never happened before. Daniel Grant didn't fall asleep in public. He barely seemed human enough to need sleep. But Rachel's attention caught on something else. There, on the white tablecloth, was Daniel's wallet. It had fallen open, and she could see the thick stack of $100 bills inside. Thousands of dollars, just sitting there exposed. Her stomach twisted. Something felt wrong about this. Men who built empires worth billions didn't just fall asleep in public with their money sitting out like that. They just didn't. Rachel glanced around the restaurant. Most people were absorbed in their own conversations, but she noticed a couple at the next table looking at the wallet with interest. The man leaned over and whispered something to his companion, and they both glanced at Daniel's sleeping form. Before she could talk herself out of it, Rachel set down her glass and walked toward table 12. Her heart was hammering. She was the newest person here. She was supposed to keep her head down, not draw attention. But she couldn't just stand by and watch. As she got closer, she noticed how different Daniel looked in sleep. The hard lines around his mouth had softened. He looked younger, almost peaceful. For just a moment, Rachel felt a strange, protective feeling toward this man who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. She reached for the wallet, intending to keep it safe behind the bar until he woke up. Her fingers had just closed around it when a voice cut through the air like a knife. "What exactly do you think you're doing?" Rachel's head snapped up. Daniel's eyes were wide open, staring right at her. And they weren't sleepy or confused. They were completely alert and absolutely furious. Rachel started, her voice barely a whisper. She was still holding his wallet. Oh God. She was holding her boss's wallet, and he'd just caught her red-handed. I asked you a question. Daniel sat up fully, his entire posture changing from relaxed to dangerous in an instant. What are you doing with my money? Every eye in the restaurant turned toward them. Rachel felt heat crawl up her neck. This was it. She was going to get fired, maybe even arrested. Her big Chicago dream was going to end in disaster. I was trying to keep it safe, she managed, her voice stronger now despite her racing heart. She placed the wallet carefully back on the table. You fell asleep and it was just sitting here and I saw people looking at it. I was going to hold it behind the bar until you woke up. I wasn't stealing it. I would never. People say a lot of things, Daniel interrupted, his voice deadly quiet. He leaned back in his chair, studying her with those penetrating eyes. You're new here. What's your name? Rachel Torres. Rachel Torres, he repeated. And how long have you worked at the Sterling Rose? 3 weeks. 3 weeks, he echoed. And in those 3 weeks, has anyone explained to you that servers don't touch customers' personal belongings? Ever? For any reason? Rachel's jaw tightened. Yes, she'd been wrong technically, but she'd been trying to help. The unfairness of it sparked something inside her. Has anyone explained to you? She shot back before she could stop herself, that falling asleep in public with thousands of dollars on your table is incredibly reckless? The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel didn't explode like Rachel expected. Instead, something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or possibly amusement. But it vanished so quickly she couldn't be sure. You're fired, he said flatly. The words hit like a physical blow. Rachel had known it was coming, but hearing it still made her stomach drop. Mr. Grant. You're fired, he repeated, standing up. He was tall, at least 6'2", and the way he looked down at her made her feel impossibly small. Collect your things and leave. HR will send your final paycheck. That's not fair. Rachel's hands clenched into fists. I was trying to help you. I don't need your help, Miss Torres. I need employees who follow protocol and respect boundaries. He picked up his wallet and slid it into his pocket with deliberate slowness. Now please leave before I call security. Rachel wanted to argue more, but the cold finality in his expression stopped her. She untied her apron with shaking fingers and set it on the nearest chair. I hope someday someone tries to help you, she said quietly, and you're not too stubborn to see it. She walked toward the staff room with her head held high, refusing to let him see the tears building in her eyes. Rachel made it half a block from the hotel before she heard footsteps behind her. Her hand moved to the pepper spray in her purse, but when she turned, it was Daniel Grant walking toward her in an expensive black coat. Mr. Grant, she said, confused. He stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets. You forgot your tip money from earlier. It's hotel policy that you receive it even after termination. He held out an envelope. Rachel stared at it, then at him. This didn't make sense. Why would he follow her outside to give her maybe $40 in tips? She opened the envelope and gasped. There had to be at least $500 inside. This isn't right, she said immediately, trying to hand it back. My tips tonight were maybe $30. I can't. Consider it severance, Daniel interrupted. And maybe an acknowledgement that you were trying to help, even if you went about it the wrong way. Rachel looked at the money, then back at him. Why did you really fire me? The question seemed to surprise him. I told you why. No, you gave me a reason. That's not the same thing. Rachel's grip tightened on the envelope. You set that whole thing up, didn't you? You weren't really asleep. You left that money there deliberately.
Testing me.
Testing all of us. Daniel's expression didn't change, but Rachel saw the slight tightening around his eyes. She was right. Why? She pressed. Why test your own employees like that? For a long moment he said nothing. Then he looked away, his gaze moving to the distant Chicago skyline. Because trust has to be earned. Because I've learned that people show their true nature when they think no one's watching. Because in my experience, Miss Torres, most people fail these tests. But I didn't fail. Rachel said quietly. I tried to protect your property. That's not failure. No, Daniel agreed, his eyes returning to her face. You didn't fail, but you also didn't follow protocol. In my hotels, protocol is everything. It's the structure that keeps things running smoothly. Rachel shook her head slowly. That's the loneliest thing I've ever heard. People aren't machines, Mr. Grant. Sometimes the right thing to do isn't in the handbook. Something flickered across Daniel's face. That same crack in his cold armor. Perhaps. But structure is what I can control. People's hearts, their intentions, those are variables I can't account for. There was something in the way he said it that made Rachel's anger soften. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the expensive clothes and cold demeanor to something else. Loneliness. The kind of weariness that came from carrying too much responsibility for too long. That sounds like a very lonely way to live, she said softly. Daniel's jaw tightened. I should get back to the hotel. He turned to leave. Mr. Grant, Rachel called out. He paused, looking back. Thank you for the money. You didn't have to do that. For the first time, Daniel's expression softened slightly. Not quite a smile, but something close. Yes, I did. Whether you believe it or not, I appreciate what you tried to do tonight. I just wish you'd done it differently. Then he was gone, walking back toward the sterling rose with his hands in his pockets. Rachel stood there for a long moment, holding the envelope and trying to understand what had just happened. 3 days later, Rachel was back to job hunting. She'd applied to 20 restaurants and hotels. Most hadn't even responded. Her savings were disappearing fast, and she had for weeks before rent was due. She was at a coffee cart, spending precious money on cheap coffee, when her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Miss Torres, this is Jennifer Kim from Grant Hotels Human Resources. Do you have a moment? Rachel's heart started racing. Yes, I have a moment. Excellent. Mr. Grant has requested a meeting with you this afternoon at 4. Would you be available? Rachel nearly dropped her coffee. A meeting about what? Mr. Grant didn't specify. He simply asked that I arrange it. Can I confirm your attendance? Rachel's mind raced. Why would Daniel want to see her? Was he going to accuse her of something? Or maybe, a small hopeful voice whispered, maybe he was going to offer her job back. Yes, Rachel heard herself say. I'll be there. An hour later, Rachel stood outside the Grant Hotel's tower, staring up at 40 stories of glass and steel. She took a deep breath and walked inside. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like it lasted forever. When the doors finally opened, Rachel stepped into an office that looked like something from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire Chicago skyline. Everything was sleek, modern, expensive. A woman in a sharp suit led Rachel down a long hallway and stopped at a door at the end. She knocked once, then opened it. Miss Torres, Mr. Grant. Rachel stepped inside. Daniel stood with his back to her, looking out at the city. He'd taken off his jacket, and for a moment he looked less like a billionaire and more like just a man. Thank you for coming, he said without turning around. Did I have a choice? Rachel asked, then immediately regretted the defensive tone. Daniel turned, and his dark eyes found hers. There's always a choice, Rachel. You chose to come. You could have ignored the call. So why did you ask me here? I want to offer you a job. Whatever Rachel had been expecting, it wasn't that. She stared at him. You fired me 3 days ago. I'm aware of that. You had me escorted out of your hotel. I remember, Daniel said, a hint of amusement in his voice. Do you want to keep listing my mistakes, or would you like to hear about the job? Rachel crossed her arms. I'm listening. Daniel moved to his desk and picked up a folder. I've been thinking about what you said. About protocol versus heart. About doing the right thing even when it's not in the handbook. He opened the folder, glanced at something inside, then looked back at her. You have an interesting background, Rachel. Hospitality degree, 6 years of restaurant experience, excellent references. You're reliable, hardworking, and according to everyone I spoke with, you have exceptional instincts for customer service. Rachel felt her cheeks heat. You investigated me. I investigate everyone who works for me. Or might work for me. Daniel set the folder down. Here's my proposition. I'm opening a new hotel in 4 months. Smaller, more intimate. Focused on personal service and genuine connection. I need someone to help develop the service approach. Someone who understands both the technical requirements and the human element. You want me to work on service protocols? Rachel couldn't keep the irony from her voice. I thought I was terrible at following them. You're terrible at following unnecessary ones, Daniel corrected. But I think you'd be excellent at creating necessary ones. Protocols that serve the guest experience rather than just management's need for control. It was tempting. The kind of opportunity that could actually change Rachel's life. But something didn't add up. Why me? She asked. You must have hundreds of qualified candidates. I do, Daniel agreed. But they all think like me. They see hotels as systems to be perfected. You see them differently. You see the people first. That's what I need. Rachel studied him. What happened to the man who fired me for not following protocol? Something shifted in Daniel's expression. He met someone who reminded him why he got into this business in the first place. Before it became about empires and profit margins. He moved closer. Look, I know I was cold that night. I know I was unfair. But I built walls for a reason, Rachel. In my experience, the moment you let people close, they find ways to disappoint you. That's pretty cynical, Rachel said softly. It's realistic. My father built this company from nothing. He trusted the wrong people, made deals with the wrong partners. It nearly destroyed everything. When I took over, I promised myself I'd never make his mistakes. Control became everything. Trust became the enemy. Rachel felt her anger melting despite herself. And now I'm wondering if maybe I've been so focused on protecting what I have that I've forgotten how to grow. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Your instinct that night was to protect me. Even at potential cost to yourself. That's rare. That's valuable. And I was too caught up in my own rules to see it. Rachel wanted to stay angry. Wanted to throw his job offer back and walk out. But looking at him now, seeing the genuine regret in his eyes, she couldn't. What would the job actually involve? She asked. Relief flickered across Daniel's face. You'd work directly with me over the next 4 months. We'd visit the new location, meet with designers, develop the service model. You'd have input on hiring, training, the overall guest experience. Once we open, you'd be the assistant general manager. Rachel's breath caught. That's a huge responsibility. Yes, Daniel agreed. Which is why the salary reflects it. $75,000 annually, plus benefits and bonuses. $75,000. More than Rachel had ever dreamed of making. More than seemed possible. That's generous, she managed. It's fair, Daniel corrected. And it's what you deserve. If you're willing to take the risk. Rachel looked at him, really looked at him, trying to decide. This was the opportunity she'd come to Chicago to find. But it also meant working closely with a man who was brilliant and compelling and absolutely terrifying. I need one condition, she heard herself say. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Which is? Honesty. If we're going to work together, I need you to be straight with me. No more tests. No more games. Just direct communication. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. That's fair. I can do that. Then I accept. The smile that crossed Daniel's face was small but genuine. The first real smile Rachel had seen from him. It transformed his entire face. Welcome to Grant Hotels, Rachel. Rachel took his hand, feeling the warmth and strength of his grip. If we're going to work together, call me Rachel. Not Miss Torres. Rachel, Daniel repeated, and something about the way he said her name made her heart skip. I'm Daniel, and I think this is going to be an interesting partnership. As Rachel left his office 20 minutes later, contract in hand, she couldn't help but think he was right. This was definitely going to be interesting. The next few weeks changed everything. Working with Daniel was nothing like Rachel expected. She'd imagined formal meetings and structured training. Instead, Daniel seemed to operate on pure instinct and intensity. He'd text her at 6 in the morning. Coffee at Morrison's. We need to talk about the vision. 7 sharp. They'd spend hours at coffee shops and restaurants, discussing what made experiences memorable. Daniel asked questions that made Rachel think deeper than she ever had. What was the difference between impressive and welcoming? When did attention to detail become intrusive? How do you make people feel like they matter? Rachel found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected. She told him about her dad's diner back home, about how her father had known everyone's name and remembered their usual orders, about how the coffee was just okay but people came back because they felt seen. That's what's missing from luxury hotels, Daniel said thoughtfully one morning. We make people feel impressed but not welcomed. They feel like visitors, not guests. Exactly, Rachel agreed. Your hotels are beautiful. The service is flawless. But they feel distant. Like museums you're visiting, not places you belong. She expected him to be offended. Instead, Daniel nodded slowly. That's what I want to change. They disagreed constantly at first. Rachel wanted warm colors. Daniel insisted on sleek minimalism. She pushed for comfortable furniture. He wanted modern design. But gradually, they found a rhythm, a way of challenging each other that led to better solutions than either could create alone. But it wasn't just the work that was intense. There was something else building between them, a tension Rachel couldn't quite name. She'd catch Daniel watching her sometimes, his expression unguarded, and something in her chest would tighten. Or their hands would brush while reviewing documents, and she'd feel a jolt that seemed to linger in the air. She told herself it was just proximity, that the attraction was natural but meaningless. Daniel Grant was her boss. He was still emotionally closed off, despite his willingness to compromise on design choices. Then everything changed on a Thursday afternoon. Rachel's phone rang while they were reviewing floor plans. Austin Regional Medical Center. Her stomach dropped. I need to take this, she said quickly, stepping into the hallway. Hello. Is this Rachel Torres? Yes. I'm calling about your mother, Patricia Torres. She's been admitted to the emergency room. She collapsed at work. We need you here as soon as possible. The world tilted sideways. Her mom lived in Ohio. Rachel was in Chicago, hours away. What happened? Is she okay? The doctor will need to speak with you. How soon can you get here? Rachel's mind raced. I can drive. I'll be there in 4 hours. She ended the call and stood there, trying to process. Her mother was in the hospital. Her mother was sick. Rachel. She looked up. Daniel stood in the doorway, concern on his face. What's wrong? It's my mom. She's in the hospital. I have to go. Rachel heard her voice shaking. I'm sorry, I know we have meetings. Stop, Daniel interrupted gently. He moved closer. Of course you need to go. Your mother is what matters. The meetings can wait. I'll need to use personal days. Rachel. Daniel's voice was firm. Listen to me. Take whatever time you need. Your job will be here when you get back. Now, when can you leave? I need to pack and then drive. If I leave in an hour. I'm driving you, Daniel said, already pulling out his phone. We'll leave in 30 minutes. Daniel, you don't have to. I want to. He looked at her with an intensity that made her throat tight. Please let me help. 20 minutes later, Rachel had thrown clothes in a bag. When she got back downstairs, Daniel was waiting by a car, wearing jeans and a sweater, looking nothing like a billionaire, and everything like just a man who cared. They drove in silence for a while. Rachel tried to hold herself together, tried not to think about worst-case scenarios. But her mind kept spinning. She raised me alone, Rachel heard herself say. My dad died when I was 23. Heart attack, completely unexpected. And Mom just kept going, kept being strong. She always told me to follow my dreams. That's why I came to Chicago. Because she believed I could. She sounds like an amazing woman, Daniel said quietly. She is. A tear escaped down Rachel's cheek. She has to be okay. I can't lose her too. Daniel reached over and took her hand. The gesture was simple, but it anchored Rachel. His hand was warm and solid, and she held on like a lifeline. I lost my father too, Daniel said after a moment. 2 years ago. Pancreatic cancer. Fast and brutal. His grip tightened. He built everything from nothing. And I spent years being angry at him for not being more careful, for trusting the wrong people. I thought I knew better. And now I wish I'd spent less time being angry and more time just being his son. I'm sorry, Rachel whispered. Your mother is going to be okay, Daniel said firmly. She raised a daughter brave enough to chase her dreams in a new city. That takes an incredible woman. When they arrived at the hospital 4 hours later, Daniel walked Rachel to the door. Thank you, she said, for everything. Daniel cupped her face gently. Call me when you know something. I will. Rachel's mother was going to be okay. Severe exhaustion and dehydration from working too many hours. The relief Rachel felt was overwhelming. But as she sat beside her mother's hospital bed that night, she realized something. She'd fallen in love with Daniel Grant. The question was what to do about it. Rachel stayed in Ohio for 3 days, making sure her mom was stable. On the drive back to Chicago, her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Welcome back. Can we talk? Coffee tomorrow morning. They met at their usual place at 7. Daniel looked tired, like he hadn't slept well. When Rachel sat down, he slid a cappuccino across the table. How's your mother? He asked. Better. She promised to take better care of herself. Rachel wrapped her hands around the warm cup. Thank you again for driving me. You didn't have to do that. Rachel. Daniel leaned forward. There's something I need to tell you. Her heart started racing. Okay. This project we're working on, it's not just about the hotel for me. He ran a hand through his hair. Since that night you tried to protect my wallet, you've been challenging everything I thought I knew. You make me want to be less controlled. More human. You make me want to take risks I've spent years avoiding. Rachel's breath caught. Daniel. Let me finish, please. He reached across and took her hand. Somewhere in all our debates about furniture and lighting, I started falling for you. And I know this is complicated. I know I'm your boss and this could be messy. So, if you don't feel the same way, we can pretend I never said this. I feel the same way, Rachel whispered. I've been falling for you too. I just didn't think someone like you would ever see someone like me that way. Someone like me? Daniel moved around the table and knelt beside her chair. Rachel, you're the bravest, most genuine person I've ever met. You walked into my hotel with nothing but heart and determination, and you've somehow changed everything about how I see the world. I'm the lucky one here. So, what do we do now? Rachel asked through her tears. Now, Daniel said, cupping her face, I'd really like to kiss you. If that's okay. That's more than okay. When his lips met hers, it felt like coming home. Rachel wrapped her arms around his neck, and for the first time in months, everything felt right. Over the next few weeks, they fell into an easy rhythm. Work during the day, stolen moments together in the evening. Daniel took her to small restaurants around Chicago. Not his fancy hotels, but little places with character and heart. They cooked together in his apartment. They talked about everything, dreams, fears, the future. The hotel project was coming together beautifully. Rachel had poured herself into creating something special. They'd hired a team that understood the vision. Everything was perfect. Until it wasn't. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. Daniel's assistant, looking pale, asked them both to come to the conference room. Inside, a woman in an expensive suit waited. Daniel, Rachel. I'm Victoria Walsh from the board of directors. Rachel's stomach dropped. She knew what was coming. The board has become aware of your personal relationship, Victoria said coldly. This creates a conflict of interest. Company policy is clear. One of you needs to step away from the project, or you need to end the relationship. Rachel watched Daniel's face harden. Watched the walls go back up. I need to speak with Rachel alone, Daniel said. When Victoria left, the silence was suffocating. I knew this would happen, Daniel said quietly. I knew getting involved was risky. So, what are you saying? Rachel's voice was small. I'm saying maybe we moved too fast. Maybe we weren't careful enough. Rachel felt something break in her chest. After everything, you're just going to give up? The moment it gets difficult, you retreat back into your walls. This is my company, Rachel. My life's work. You've been in Chicago for a few months. You don't understand what's at stake. The words were cruel and dismissive. Rachel saw the regret flash across Daniel's face the moment he said them. But it was too late. You're right, Rachel said quietly. I don't understand your world. I'm just a girl from Ohio who is stupid enough to think she belonged here. Rachel, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. She grabbed her bag. You have until Friday to decide what matters more, Daniel. The hotel or us. But honestly, I think we both know what you're going to choose. She walked out before he could respond. For 2 days, Rachel heard nothing. She spent the time updating her resume, preparing to leave Chicago, trying not to cry. Friday evening, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Come to the Sterling Rose tonight. 7 p.m. Please. Rachel almost didn't go. But something made her get dressed, take the train downtown, walk into that rooftop restaurant where everything had started. The restaurant was dark except for one table. Table 12, where this whole story began. And sitting there, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him, was Daniel. He stood when he saw her. You came. You asked me to. Rachel stayed by the door. What is this? This is me making a choice. He gestured to the table. Will you sit? Rachel crossed to the table. On her plate was an envelope. Open it, Daniel said softly. Inside was a letter on company letterhead. Daniel's resignation from the hotel project. What is this? Rachel whispered. It's me choosing you, Daniel said. The project is yours now. You'll be general manager. You'll oversee everything. This is your dream now. But it's your dream. Your father's legacy. My father's legacy is about connection. About bringing people together. Daniel took her hand. The most important connection I've ever made is with you. I've spent my whole life protecting myself, building walls. And then you walked in and challenged everything. You made me want to be brave. Tears streamed down Rachel's face. Daniel. I was wrong, Rachel. Wrong to pull away. Wrong to make you feel like you weren't worth fighting for. Because you are. You're what matters. You're what makes all the rest of it worthwhile. So, what happens now? Rachel asked through her tears. Daniel knelt beside her chair. Now I'm asking if you'll give me another chance. Let me prove I can be the man you deserve. You already are that man, Rachel said. You always were. You just needed to see it yourself. When he kissed her, it felt like everything falling into place. 6 months later, Rachel stood in the lobby of their new hotel on opening night. Warm lights glowed against brick walls. Comfortable furniture invited people to stay. The space hummed with exactly the energy she'd envisioned. Connection, warmth, belonging. Daniel found her by the front desk. How does it feel? Perfect, Rachel said, leaning into him. Rachel. Daniel pulled out a small box and opened it, revealing a diamond ring. I gave you a hotel. Now I want to give you everything else. Will you marry me? Yes, Rachel whispered. Absolutely yes. Standing there, surrounded by people they loved in the hotel they'd built together, Rachel felt complete. She'd come to Chicago chasing a dream. She'd found a career, a community, and a love that transformed her. And it all started with a simple moment of kindness. A choice to help someone, even when it might cost her everything. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is reach out when you see someone in need. Sometimes taking that risk opens doors you never knew existed. Rachel had taken that risk, and it had given her a life beyond her wildest dreams. Thanks for your watching. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the Story Room for meaningful stories that inspire and teach life lessons.